Hey there, fellow ChessGoons. My name is Anthony Arena. I am a 2000 rated chess expert from Long Island, New York. And in today's video, we are going to use a live game to answer the age-old question, what is more valuable, two rooks or a queen? Let's get started, guys. Let's dive right in with our speed run. We'll go d4, and we have more a passive opening with the e6 Horowitz defense. C4 or e4, solid options here. E4 walks right into the French. C4 would be turned into more of a Queen's Gambit, probably declined position, so he'll push. Knight will come to F3. So we're actually going to end up in more of a queen. Yeah, so more of a Queen's Gambit declines. Normally this bishop stays on the inside, but in this type of position, I actually like pinning the knight here. This dark square bishop's usually pretty useless. So by pinning the knight, we're going to get rid of our most useless piece. And if he pushes h6, we take, queen takes back. And then we close down the position with e3. Notice that our dark square bishop would have been trapped, but now it's not really a problem anymore. Bishop b4 pins the knight to the king. Best response here, queen c2. If bishop takes, taking with the pawn or the queen, both solid options. Either or is good for us. He castles, and now we're going to look to develop. So knight to f3. The bishop can go to e2 or d3, except now. So in this situation, we actually do take this pawn. If we were to play, let's say, bishop d3, right? Or even bishop e2, and then the pawn took, the bishop would have to take back. And it would be pointing out this weird e6 pawn. So not really very dangerous. And really on top of that, we'd be wasting tempo. So let's take first. I have no problem with that. And now with this bishop, we actually have three options. So e2, d3, b5. Any of them are solid. No problem with any of these positions. I do see a pinning possibility here. I'm not really sure where I put the knight in that situation. Maybe just bishop e2, a more conservative option. Not too afraid of the bishop g4 idea because the bishop would just take back and then we'd be pointing at a relatively weak square in this particular position, right? D5. We'll castle. The knight's no longer pinned as well, so knight d5 immediately becomes a threat. So yeah, he takes. Yeah, queen takes back. Not a problem. You might want to shuffle the queen over to b3. We get a fork on these vulnerable squares. Of course, rook b8 would win this pawn back, but then we'd win the c7 pawn. So notice queen b3 is a fork, and we're attacking a bunch of different squares at once. I don't see any way for him to defend both squares at the same time. I think he's going to kind of have to eat the fact that we're going to win this pawn. This doesn't help his situation. He alleviates the pin. So our knight before didn't really have any good squares to go to because bishop would just take the bishop back, eyeing down a rook. But because the bishop takes here, he makes his situation slightly worse. There's an extra attacker on d5. And knight a5, very specific, attacking the queen, but also protecting b7. I like I like queen takes d5 quite a lot. It attacks the knight and it forces something like b6, and then maybe we consider trading the queen for two rooks. So queen d5, and then I think maybe something like b6 would be played to protect the knight. Of course, if the knight moves, we attack this pawn here. B2 is weak here for sure, and we have to note that do we want to lose the b2 pawn? And most of the time, these types of positions, no problem losing the b2 pawn whatsoever. Our opponent decides, yeah, okay. I actually like that move. So maybe just queen c5, queen c4 just allows him to kind of repeat moves, but then we would be attacking c7. Yeah, queen c5. I don't see any drawbacks to queen c5. I don't see any drawbacks. Bishop takes here. We're also targeting b7, and if the queen takes back, queen takes. we double up his pawns, we're up a pawn. The C pawns are isolated, and there's no use in trying to defend them really. Like you can't use the pawns to defend each other, so they're bad pawns that are doubled, in my opinion. So ISO double pawns are going to be disadvantaged for black. And it's been a slow game, yes, but we've been playing methodically. We haven't been making mistakes. And here we go with bishop c6 take. I like the bishop better than the knight in this situation, but notice that these pawns are a massive structural deficiency. The A pawn is on its own as well. And we'll simply just slide the rook over to c1. But do we do A to C or F to C? And when you're making that type of decision, I want you to look at what the rooks are currently doing and do we still need them doing that particular role? So the rook on F2 is, oh, the rook on F1, excuse me, is defending F2. And the queen is eyeing down F2 already. The rook here is defending the A2 pawn, which to me isn't as important of a role because there's nothing attacking A2. So Rook C1, natural idea, and very difficult to defend. I expect Rook D6, which maybe he's looking to play Queen F5 and then Rook F6. But once again, that type of idea is protected because we didn't move the F pawn, we moved the A pawn instead. So you see how those ideas can be quite important. So he defends, but defending comes with a cost. You can maybe consider pushing E4, but then this pawn is hanging and we don't necessarily want to just give up free material, but Queen A5 is fascinating to me because it's another fork. And we can sort of start whittling these pawns away. And because the rooks aren't connected, an idea like either Rook C8 or Rook A8, not as much of an option. Okay, so don't sleep on this type of move. It protects A6. It does leave C7 open, but if we take C7, we are hanging this take back, and he'll win a pawn back. But simply just sliding the queen back to C5 takes. And in this situation, we've done our job, we've won the pawn, and we haven't really destroyed the integrity of our position. This D pawn is completely passed. We just have to worry about taking out this C pawn. And really rook, okay, there we go. But it's interesting because how do I want to go about this? Maybe rook c2, which defends f2, which is a square that we're sort of worried about, but then rook c1. So now the rook here is doing the job of the f1 rook, but we have a tripled up attack on the C. We kind of just create all the pieces of Exodia together, the queen and two rooks on the C file. So there we go. Rook C1. And I was expecting that. No big deal. We'll just slide the other rook over. And okay, so here's something to consider. If we trade the queen for two rooks, we would be winning. We would be. At the end of the day, we're up two pawns already. Two rooks are worth more than a queen. It could be a little risky, but I think the best practice would be to take the rook here. I think the best practice is to take the rook here and show off how to play two rooks against a queen. So mainly our threats right now are forks and back ranks. And really the way we kind of try to prevent these ideas is by keeping the rooks connected and maybe creating an escape square on h3. But that's not necessarily the biggest concern. Okay, rook c6, we could win this pawn, two doubled up pawns, and then we just march. I think these two rooks are going to be a distinctive advantage against this queen, and this should be a pretty reasonable win. I don't really see the counterplay. So mainly you're just going to want to watch out for the back rank, right? But keep the rook stationed on c1. We'll take this a6 pawn, and then we'll just slide back. And I think that's fine. I don't see a reason why we can't just take this pawn. Yeah, he's getting aggressive and he's targeting the rook, but just rook back to c6. Very principled chess here. And now we just have to protect these two pawns, and we have our rooks on the c file. Yep. So no big deal. B3. A2 is the threat, so he'll maybe scoot over to A5. So C2. Keep the rooks connected. The rooks connected are extremely strong. And yeah, I'll create H3. I'll create H3 as a little way of giving my king an escape because we don't want to get back ranked. Back rank is a serious concern here. And maybe now we can consider rook C3, A3, and start this push. I think starting the push here would make a lot of sense because he'll target this pawn here, but we'll push A4. There's a bit of a weakness. I mean, B3 isn't going to be the easiest pawn to defend, but it's also, I mean, maybe maybe rook C5 attacking another pawn. He'll probably, yeah, he slides the queen over looking to take. And rook C3. We're leaving the first rank, which could be a little risky, but at the end of the day, yeah, okay. I have an idea. I have a winning idea. So notice that the pawn is defending C5. If we play rook takes D5, it's check on the king, and if the queen takes back, rook c5, and we're actually able to trade the two rooks for the queen, and we win the pawn, which is an even exchange, but with low time, that should be completely winning. And because it's check, he can't really create a counterattack. He sees the idea and he just moves the king out of the way. But I think actually trading the queen would have been the best move here. Notice that in this situation, the rook is covering d3, the pawn is covering f3, this pawn is covering f4, and this rook is covering all the escape squares, which means, if I'm not mistaken, rook e5, checkmate. Great game, guys.